Hello, everyone, and welcome to Registrar Corp's webinar entitled Top Food Facility Inspection Violations and How to Avoid Them. My name is Jonathan Rhodes, a marketing specialist at Registrar Corp and today's moderator. This presentation will conclude with a live questions and answers session. If we run out of time, we are also happy to respond to your questions by email. You may submit a written question anytime during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your webinar screen. A recorded copy of this presentation will be sent to all registrants. I'd like to introduce our speaker today. Rick Barham holds a Bachelor of Science degree in Animal Science from Virginia Tech and a Bachelor of Science degree in Accounting from Christopher Newport University. Mr. Barham has over 31 years of experience in the food safety profession. He acted as Regional Manager of the Virginia Department of Agriculture's Food Safety Program. He has attended numerous training sessions with the FDA, including good manufacturing practice, application and evidence development, dietary supplement GMP, managing food allergens, and special processes at retail. He has also completed certifications or coursework in Seafood HACCP, Better Process Control School for LACF and acidified foods, Food Defense, Reduced Oxygen Packaging HACCP, and held FDA Commission credentials. He has been honored with numerous rewards, including Inspector of the Year in 1992, the Food Safety Task Force Merit Team Award of Excellence in 2002, and FDA Leveraging Collaboration Awards for cooperative investigational work. Mr. Barham manages Registrar Corp's Food Facility Inspection Team. He and his team of inspectors help facilities prepare for FDA inspections by conducting mock inspections to identify potential areas of vulnerability. I'd like to go ahead and begin. Rick?
Thank you, Jonathan. Good morning, everybody. Hello, and thank you for inviting me to speak to you today about food facility inspections. To start the presentation, let's look at where FDA has jurisdiction. As the slides show, FDA requires both foreign and domestic firms that manufacture processed food offered for sale in the United States to register. Failure to register can result in regulatory action, including not allowing the product to enter the country. You will see where the slide references notice of inspection. We will cover that later in the presentation. I will say one thing, though, as you will notice that foreign manufacturers do have an advantage over domestic manufacturers in that they will be notified prior to the FDA inspection. Importers, they are not required to register. However, FDA is conducting FSBP inspections during the pandemic, which we will touch on in just a minute. Now let's take a look at the most common violations cited by FDA in 2020. Importers especially need to take note of this slide. The failure to implement an FSBP plan is the number one violation that was cited. As you can see, it is up 50% over 2019. As indicated in the slide, importers are required to verify that their suppliers and products meet FDA requirements. For suppliers, it is important that they have implemented preventive controls and have a food safety plan. In addition to FSBP violations, this slide shows the most common good manufacturing practices and preventive controls violations, along with their CFR, which stands for Code of Federal Regulations, reference. Hazard analysis. This violation is pertaining to preventive controls, the requirement to have a food safety plan. The second one, pest control, which is obvious. You don't want pests in your facility. Manufacturing, processing, packaging, holding controls means do you have effective cleaning practices? Is your equipment clean? So if this is being cited, well, obviously your cleaning is deficient, your equipment is dirty. You are not protecting food from allergen cross contact. These would be the type of violations that would be cited here. Personnel practices, it's important that personnel wear hairnets, they're not eating, drinking, smoking in a food processing area. The last one, sanitation. You will notice that the CFR reference is different. It is 123 versus 117. That is because this reference is in regards to seafood manufacturing and the need to monitor sanitation conditions in the facility. So how can we avoid being cited? Let's talk about the FDA inspection process. FDA inspections are a careful, critical, official examination of a facility to determine its compliance with the laws administered by FDA. That makes sense. How do they decide which firms they're going to inspect? FDA focuses selection on foreign food facilities for inspection based on an overall risk profile, product risk, and process complexity. For example, high-risk food commodities include modified atmosphere packaged products, acidified and low-acid canned foods, seafood, dairy. Those are high-risk food commodities. This is not an exhaustive list by any means. FDA could conduct inspections of other food commodities as part of its surveillance activities. They also look at the compliance history of the firm. Are they in good standing with FDA? Has there been problems in the past? Has the company been subject to import alert, import refusal? Has there been a recall? These are all factors that weigh into their decision whether to inspect your particular firm. And generally speaking, there is a convenience factor as well. As the slide indicates, FDA will send the inspector out to conduct multiple facility inspections during one trip. They are not taking these people out and sending them to a foreign country just to do one firm. It is much too expensive for that. So there may be a case where there is availability on a schedule and they will plug in a firm because it is convenient to where the other facilities are located. This is one of my favorite slides because I like the picture. This poor gentleman is looking at his email, and obviously he has gotten a notice from FDA that says, we're coming to inspect your firm. This is what is referred to as a notice of inspection. It will come from fda.hhs.gov because there's a lot of spam out there, so it's important to understand that that is where the notice of inspection will come from. There is one thing I want to mention while we are talking about notice of inspection. I have had people inform me that they feel like they have received the notice of inspection in error. For example, they are a broker, they are an exporter, and they're like, why is FDA coming? We have no food here. I think this is a mistake. What do? They need to respond back to FDA. And my understanding is in that type of situation, FDA would ask that they provide information about their supplier. But I think what you could take away from it mostly is the fact, do not delete the email. You would need to respond back to FDA and provide them some sort of reason as to why you think you received the notice of inspection in error. Some key points to take away is that the notice of inspection is sent in English and the official language of the country. As I mentioned before, you do want to respond, you need to respond. The failure to respond could incur regulatory actions, such as a refusal of admission or other types of regulatory actions. So it is very important that you do respond. This is the factory profile. This is attached to the notice of inspection. FDA asks that you complete a factory profile form with general information about your facility. They have sections on the types of processes that occur at your facility, whether you are a dietary supplement producer, whether you produce low acid canned foods, acidified foods. They'll want contact information. They request information about transportation as well. And again, this is called a factory profile form. It is 6 pages long, and the FDA asks that you provide this information as well. Now, this also, in kind of finishing up our discussion about the notice of inspection, obviously right now we're in the midst of the pandemic. However, FDA is still sending out notice of inspections to firms. You do need to respond back. You need to complete the factory profile form. FDA, the responses that I am seeing back from FDA is that they will acknowledge receipt of your information, and they will tell you that they are not currently scheduling inspections. The response could take days. It could take several weeks, months. I don't think it's going to take that long, but generally, I don't think it would be unusual for the response to be several weeks before you get a response back. Once we get past this awful pandemic, FDA will begin to coordinate inspection dates. They will come back to you, inform you the name of the inspector, and provide their flight information. And they could ask you to assist them in making hotel reservations, providing ground transportation, and whether an interpreter is needed. And if an interpreter is needed, that is an expense that FDA will incur. They do not expect the firm to hire an interpreter. If the company wants to do it, it's fine, but it is not a requirement, and FDA will provide one if necessary. FDA focuses on a firm's adherence to the good manufacturing practices and other regulations that are applicable to the type of food being produced by the factory. In this example, you will see multiple regulations would be applicable to a canned food seafood product. Seafood HACCP regulation, obviously. Low acid canned foods, it's canned tuna. Good manufacturing practices, that is the foundation on which the other regulations are based. And you will see where we have put in bold 21 CFR 117. This is one of the updates as part of the Food Safety Modernization Act. The old GMP regulation was 21 CFR 110. The new GMP regulation is 117. The main difference, if you will, is that allergen controls are now mandated. Food labeling, certainly, it's another regulation. It's another aspect of the inspection. They will review your label. And in this particular case, you have the regulation of emergency permit control, which is applicable to a low acid canned food. The FDA inspections, they can range anywhere from 2 to 5 days. The 2 days are more of a traditional HACCP inspection. 5 days, folks, they can spend up to 5 days in your firm. 5 days are what they refer to as preventive control inspections. And we are seeing an increase in the number of preventive control inspections that FDA is conducting. Usually, FDA, will examine the production process. They could collect samples. They'll look at food safety records. Food safety records could include records under preventive controls, such as verification records, process records, such as monitoring records, samples. FDA does have the right to collect samples. I think it's doubtful that they would, especially for a foreign facility, but they could. FDA will target specific industry issues. For example, in this slide, it references allergens. Allergens are a main focus of FDA right now. So certainly they want to make sure that, if allergens are an issue in the facility, that you have an allergen control plan. You're avoiding potential cross contact. You have good cleaning sanitation procedures in place. Do you use rework, product sequencing, factory separation, those type of things? So they're going to look at all of that as part of an FDA inspection. This slide talks about non-FDA documents. These would be documents that the firm would have that they would like the investigator to sign, such as a waiver if the inspector was to get hurt, form letters about confidentiality, things like that. FDA will not sign those documents. FDA will sign in and out. Once they arrive, they will sign in, and at the end of the day, they will sign out of a firm. But other than that, do not expect FDA to sign company documents. They will make a note on what they call the Establishment Inspection Report that these are procedures or practices that you have at their firm, but they will not sign those documents. Let's talk about the actual inspection. This is just a very general kind of slide to kind of talk about what you could expect. Upon arrival, FDA is going to show you their credentials. Certainly, that goes without saying. That's kind of common sense. They need to do that. For our domestic firms, FDA will provide them a Form 482, Notice of Inspection. However, for the foreign facilities, they don't do that. The Notice of Inspection that has been sent electronically acts as the FDA Form 482. They'll hold an introductory meeting to discuss the reason for the inspection, the scope of the inspection. They'll take a tour to gain an understanding of the operation, and then they'll begin their document review. This is typical for a day one inspection. Day two to the finish. And again, this could be up to 5 days with a preventive controls inspection. A continuation of the document review, and the preventive controls inspection is very document review heavy. They will look at the food safety plan. They will look at your monitoring procedures. They will look at corrective action procedures, your verification procedures. So again, your supply chain program, they're going to look at all of that type of documentation. The factory inspection. Part of the factory inspection, obviously, they're going to go out on the production floor. They're not going to sit in a room reviewing records all day long. So they will be out there on the production floor. They like to see the company in operation. They will certainly follow your sanitation procedures. They're very cognizant of that. They don't want to potentially contaminate any products. So if you want the inspector to wear booties, gloves, earplugs, safety glasses, they will follow your sanitation procedures. They will have a closing meeting. Okay, that certainly makes sense. They will go over the objectionable conditions, the observations that they had during the inspection, answer any questions that you would have. And then it talks about the delivery of the Form 483. And to the right of the slide, and I know it's very fuzzy and you can't really see it, but that is an example of a Form 483. And a company will get a Form 483 if during the inspection, the inspector found significant violations that warranted documentation. And we will go over in more detail shortly about the Form 483. As I mentioned before, the preventive controls inspection, I keep referring to it as a 5-day. It doesn't necessarily have to be 5 days. It could be up to 5 days. So it could be 3 days, 4 days, what have you. But FDA is allowing their investigators up to 5 days to conduct and complete a preventive controls inspection. As I mentioned before, it is a very comprehensive record review in addition to the actual physical inspection of the plant. They will review the food safety plan. They will look at your hazard analysis. They will look at your preventive controls. They will look at it, very, very closely. So again, it's imperative that your plan is current and it's up to date. As I mentioned previously, I would expect FDA to conduct a walkthrough of the facility before starting the formal inspection. This is really just to familiarize themselves with the scope of the inspection, identify areas of concern, identify potential sources of records. So when they walk through, they're going to be looking at personnel. They'll look at the plant, the grounds, outside. What does it look like? Is it neat? Is it tidy? Is there a lot of trash on the ground outside? Things like that. The equipment and utensils used, sanitation procedures, et cetera, et cetera. Your manufacturing processes, do they see any obvious points of contamination? Those are all things that they do. And this is just through the facility walkthrough prior to really starting an in-depth inspection. It's just to kind of get an overall grasp of what is going on at your facility. At the conclusion of the inspection, FDA will hold a closeout meeting, as I mentioned before. They will go over the findings. If there's any significant findings, they will issue an inspection report or the Form 483. If there are no significant violations, they will not issue a report. So you could have a situation where your business looks very good. You're doing a great job. Maybe the inspector points out a couple of what they consider minor things. They have a verbal discussion, but they don't leave you a report. That is great. It's not like, oh, wait a minute, I want a report. They are only going to issue a report if they find significant violations. So the best thing you can hope for is at the end of the inspection, they sit down, they talk to you, they shake your hand, and they leave. That would be great, and that's what everybody is after. On that Form 483, and maybe I should have mentioned it in the previous slide, the observation should be ranked in order of significance. So the first thing on the report is the most significant violation. The last thing is the least significant, or they're getting less significant as you go down. Corrective action. FDA expects you to respond. Generally speaking, FDA is looking for a response within 15 days. 15 days after the end of the inspection. They are looking for definitive responses. They don't want something vague that says, thank you, FDA, for coming to our facility, and we have made all the necessary repairs indicated on your inspection report. That is not a suitable response. You need to provide definitive corrective action. FDA loves pictures. A before and after picture is great. They love that. If it's something that's going to take a while to get done, if you have some structural repairs that need to be made, you had to replace equipment, something like that, you haven't had it completed within that 15-day window, provide them an invoice, a receipt. If they said that you have to take a training course and you haven't gotten in yet, but you've gotten some sort of email correspondence indicating that you have signed up for the class, things like that. That's the type of documentation that they need. Again, very definitive, nothing vague. If it's just vague, they will say it's inadequate. And, they'll probably follow up with, another request for corrective action, or again, they potentially could take regulatory action. The establishment inspection report. Now, I mentioned at the end of the inspection that FDA, if they find violations, they will issue you a 483 inspection report. But if they don't really find any significant violations, they're not going to leave you an inspection report. What you will get in all instances is what is called an establishment inspection report. You will get this after the inspection is deemed closed by FDA, that either one, you did not have any violations, two, you have provided corrective actions which FDA has accepted. The establishment inspection report does not necessarily come in a timely manner. Again, it is once FDA considers the inspection to be closed, and this can be anywhere from 3 to 6 months after the inspection. It does cover everything the investigator did during the inspection. It includes administrative data, the history of the firm. They're going to cover training of employees, when did the company start in business, what are your operating hours, the products that you produce, just a general overview of your operations, and it will also include their observations during the inspection. So they will sit down and talk to probably upper management, to get this type of information. So again, this is another aspect of the inspection, is also gathering this type of historical information about the firm. Inspection classification. Well, this, I know there's a lot of interest in this. How does FDA classify the inspection? There are 3 classifications to an FDA inspection. There is no action indicated, or NAI, voluntary action indicated, VAI, and official action indicated, OAI, which is in red because that's a failing inspection, and that is what we don't want. Now, I will tell you, NAI, that means they found nothing wrong, and as I mentioned, there is no 483 inspection report left at the firm. You passed with flying colors. That is the best classification you can have. That is what everybody strives for. The middle classification, voluntary action indicated, most inspections by FDA fall in this category. You pass the inspection. There is nothing wrong with voluntary action indicated. Again, you're passing the inspection. They found something wrong, but it's not to the point where they think it is a public health hazard. This could be, for example, say that overhead fluorescent lights are not shielded, and they put that on the report. Okay, it needs to be corrected, but it's not a significant public health hazard. That would be a VAI inspection. Or the doors don't fit tight with the floor. It affords a potential pest entry point into your facility. VAI. There's some clutter, there's some trash outside premises. Again, it could be a pest harborage area. They don't see any evidence of pests, but the harborage potential is there. They put it on the report. That's a VAI observation. Official action indicated, again, that's a failing inspection. Your business is out of control. They have legitimate public health concerns about what's going on in your facility. This could be, if you remember from the beginning of the presentation, we talked about pest control. Let's say you have an active rodent problem in your facility. You're going to fail the inspection. If you have rodent defiled food in the warehouse, chances are you're going to fail the inspection. You get into preventive controls. You haven't conducted a hazard analysis. You don't have a food safety plan. Monitoring is inadequate. These are all the types of things FDA is going to look at very closely and can quite possibly kick your inspection over into the OAI classification. I will tell you also that the inspector does not classify your inspection. That is done by a supervisor back in Washington, D.C. The investigator probably has a pretty good idea how it's going to be classified, but they don't actually do it, and I would not expect the investigator to tell you how it's going to be classified. It's also important, and I was almost going to skip over this, but I'd be remiss if I didn't mention this, that at the bottom of the slide, it does mention that FDA discloses the final inspection classification in an online database. So you can Google that information. Once the inspection is closed, FDA will post the inspection classification. They do not post the actual inspection findings, but it will have your firm name and it will have the classification of the inspection. Okay, let's talk about if it's OAI. Again, that's what we don't want, but just in case, let's throw it out there and let's talk about what potentially could happen. To the right, again, I apologize for the clarity. I know it's poor, but that is an example of a warning letter. FDA could send you a warning letter saying that they'll reference the violations that were found during the inspection. Okay, maybe you could deal with a warning letter. That doesn't sound terrible. Okay, well, there's other actions they can take as well. They can detain your product at the port. They could suspend your registration. Those are heavy, heavy things that they could beat you up with. They could re-inspect you under FSMA. And I do want to mention that under FSMA, FDA could charge for the re-inspection. And I don't know the exact dollar amount that they charge per hour for a re-inspection. And again, they don't necessarily do this, but under FSMA they could. I believe the actual hourly rate is around $300 an hour is what FDA charges. And mind you, folks, that they're charging you for flying that investigator to your facility. They're charging for the actual inspection. They're charging for the time to write up the report, analyze any samples that might have been collected. They're charging you for all of that. $300 an hour. Registrar thinks that if FDA was to do that, you're probably looking at a reinspection that would probably cost in excess of $10,000. And lastly, under OAI, they could take you to court and prosecute you. If things are so bad and they can't get compliance, they will take you to court and they will prosecute you. So obviously, and I know I didn't have to say this, but what we all want is to avoid an OAI inspection at any cost. Again, VAI, they put something on the report. Okay, you might not like it, but you don't fail. OAI, totally different story. Recommendations. You need to be prepared. Okay, we do feel like having a review, bringing in an outside entity, such as registrar or somebody else, if you have another personal working relationship. But again, bringing in an external expert, a different pair of eyes looking at something is very beneficial. You see the same thing day after day after day. Somebody new walking in there, a lot of times they will pick up on things you don't see. Okay. We also think that it is very important. It's in bold right there in the middle. It is very important during the inspection if the investigator points something out, says, for example, there is no soap at the hand sink. You need to put soap at the hand sink before that investigator leaves. There's no towels at the hand sink. Same thing, something that is easy to fix. You need to do it during that inspection. Obviously it shows that you care, you take the investigator's comments seriously. It shows that you're committed to food safety. And also, most likely, if you can correct something that they point out during the inspection, chances are they will not put it on the inspection report. So it is absolutely critical that you do that if at all possible. The bottom one, you want to respond to the 483 with evidential solutions, not vague answers. Again, we talked a lot about that in a previous slide. Very, very important. Again, show them documentation, show them proof, take the before and after photograph, provide them receipts, provide them invoices, give them evidential solutions. The other thing that I would add during an FDA inspection is never, ever leave the inspector alone. Always be with the inspector. Always have somebody with the inspector. Do not let that man, that woman just walk through your plant unaccompanied. Very, very important that you stay with them. And it's also, and again, this kind of goes without saying, that you want to have a cooperative attitude when FDA is there. You may not like the fact that they're there. You may want them to leave, 5 minutes after they got there, but you need to have a cooperative attitude with FDA. It'll go a lot further than being argumentative on every point that FDA brings up during the inspection. So how can we help you? As I mentioned before, we can help. We have a mock inspection service. As Jonathan indicated in the introduction, I am the mock inspection manager. We have a very good team of folks that go out and conduct the mock inspections. We do a good job. Myself, I conduct mock inspections. I've seen the work of our other investigators. I am very comfortable with the work that we do. We're highly trained, and I like to think we would do a very good job for you. Now, the on-site inspections are on hold right now because of the pandemic. Hopefully, it's such a fluid situation. I'm hesitant to give you an idea of like when we can begin traveling again. It seems like maybe we, have kind of gotten over the hill and we're starting to get a better handle on it. I certainly hope so with the vaccines. But maybe by late summer, early fall, we may be at a point where we can travel again. I certainly hope so. As I mentioned also earlier, FDA is sending out notice of inspections, but FDA is not scheduling inspections at this time. They are not traveling either. It is a situation, obviously, we're monitoring very closely, and as soon as we're at the point of being able to travel again, we will get that word out to our client firms. But now what we do offer is a virtual mock inspection. We've conducted several of those. They've worked well. I think folks are pleased with the feedback they have received from us. So virtual mock inspections, we can schedule those. We can do a document review and with Wi-Fi, cell phones, we can go into the plant, take conduct a virtual inspection of your facility as well. So I talked a lot about that. And again, this slide is kind of like assuming that, we are over the pandemic, but when we do conduct an on-site inspection, they are 2 days typically. The first day is a document review. The second day, we do an actual physical inspection of your facility. We will leave you a comprehensive report that details our observations. Virtual mock inspections basically follow the same outline. Document review the first day, and then we'll do the virtual walkthrough inspection of your physical facility on day 2, and we will also provide a comprehensive written report. In addition to the mock inspection services that we offer, we do have a lot of different services available, and again, I really truly believe that we do just an excellent job with this. We have registration, U.S. agent service, prior notice, labeling reviews, outstanding label review work, LACF, SID verifiers, FCE wizard, compliance monitor, detention service, petition submissions, quite extensive range of services. So I do encourage you, if you have any concerns or interest in these particular areas, this is services that Registrar is able to offer.
Thank you, Rick, for that great presentation. Again, I'd like to announce that we will be sending a recorded copy of this webinar and a PDF copy of the presentation to all registrants. You may submit a written question at any time during the webinar by using the Ask a Question feature in the top center of your webinar screen. I'm going to go ahead and switch our slide to show you our contact information. So again, we're going to try to answer as many questions as we can today. If we're unable to answer your question, we encourage you to email us at info@registrarcorp.com, which is on the screen, or you can go to registrarcorp.com/offices to get assistance from one of our worldwide offices that provide regional and multilingual support. Okay, our first question. How many days before visiting the manufacturer will we receive a notice for inspection?
There's not a definitive number of days between notice of inspection and the actual physical inspection of your facility. It may be upwards of a month. You have to understand that once FDA goes back to traveling, they have to make all the arrangements. As I said before, they're not looking at just going to one facility. They're trying to schedule 4, 5, 6 different facilities for one investigator. So they have to make all of those arrangements. So I think it could be easily a month, maybe 2 months from notice of inspection to actual physical inspection of your facility.
Thank you, Rick. Our next question, does FDA's notice of inspection for a non-US manufacturing company include the information on the inspection date / the schedule of the inspection?
It doesn't actually include the actual inspection date or schedule. Again, that is going to be the correspondence after you respond to the notice of inspection. You submit the factory profile form to FDA. FDA will respond. These are, again, this is under normal conditions, not talking about COVID. But you respond back, you send them the factory profile form. FDA will respond back acknowledging receipt of it, and then they will reach back out to you. And again, it could be several weeks later saying that we would like to schedule it on such and such a date. And, again, it's probably going to be another month or two out from that, just to give you time, to give them time to get everything prepared for their investigator. So again, not a definitive date on the NOI, but is something that is discussed and finalized in follow-up conversation.
Thank you, Rick. And our next question, this is a great question. I'll take this one. Who is our U.S. agent contact? We have a customer in the United States and we are producing for him, and we are not located in the United States. So as Rick mentioned earlier in the presentation, the U.S. agent is one of the parties that receives the notification of inspection, and FDA will treat communications with the U.S. agent as that of the facility. So they will send your U.S. agent a notice of inspection. That being said, it's very important that you have a U.S. agent that's knowledgeable on U.S. FDA regulations. This is the contact that you designate when you register your facility with FDA. So whomever handles your registration within your organization, they should know your U.S. agent contact. But you definitely want to verify that that U.S. agent is familiar with FDA regulations and is going to know what to do when they receive the contact about the notice of inspection. Our next question, what sections of 21 CFR 117 will apply to a finished dietary supplement manufacturer?
117 does not apply to a finished dietary supplement manufacturer. That is not the applicable regulation. Dietary supplements fall under 21 CFR 111.
Thank you, Rick. My company produces frozen fruit, and we do not have any allergens. We are having some customers ask for an allergen policy. Our fruit doesn't have allergens, so therefore no policy. What is the best way to respond to this?
Well, that's a good question. I think you could tell them, that, again, you're a frozen fruit manufacturer and, there's no allergens related to your products. FDA has identified the, quote, big 8 allergens, which, talk about soy and wheat and fish and crustacean shellfish and milk, peanuts, tree nuts. So if you don't fall into that category, you don't have those type of allergens in your facility, then, I think that's probably the best way to respond to them.
All right, thank you, Rick. Our next question, will FDA send an agenda before the inspection?
Generally, they do send you a very basic type of agenda before the inspection, yes. But the actual, probably the more day-to-day details of the inspection would be covered by correspondence between you and the investigator, maybe in the days before the actual inspection.
Our next question, we are a pet food importer using an external warehouse service provider. Will FDA inspect our office, our external warehouse, or our foreign supplier, or all?
FDA, if you're an importer that is holding food or you process food, if you handle that food, you have it in your possession, then FDA could go out and inspect that.
If FDA inspects a manufacturing plant outside of the United States, should the documents be in English?
FDA would greatly appreciate it if you could provide the documents in English. Again, it is not a requirement. We talked about a translator. Again, FDA will take on those responsibilities of a translator in, for the spoken word or for documents if necessary. However, if you could have it in English, that would be a big plus on your side.
If a company has several facilities, does FDA visit each of them during the inspection?
Not necessarily, no. If they're in close proximity to one another, then perhaps they would. But if they're in different, areas of the city or country, then no, I would not expect them to inspect the different locations. Only the location indicated on the notice of inspection.
Our next question, does FDA check the implementation of a corrective action?
I would expect FDA to look at that. Yes, again, they're going to do, especially if it's a preventive controls inspection, they will do a comprehensive record review. So they will look at all aspects of your food safety plan, including corrective action or HACCP plan. They'll look at everything, including corrective action.
Our next question, this is a great question, just for a point of clarification. We are a producer of candy and are FDA approved, but we have not had an FDA audit yet. How can we be FDA approved? So in this scenario, FDA doesn't approve a food or beverage product. What happens is a food or beverage facility registers with FDA, and when they do that, they consent to the inspection, as Rick had mentioned earlier. So you're never going to be approved as a food manufacturing facility. What FDA does is a enforcement of that, kind of like a police officer might enforce traffic laws in your home country. If you're speeding, you might get pulled over and get a ticket for that. FDA is more of an enforcer for the food and beverage industry. We are developing a new food and beverage product for the United States. When does the food safety plan need to be ready? At the first delivery to the United States or sooner?
You should have a food safety plan in place prior to, developing that gum or, food product.
In the case that an FDA inspection finds that there is a correct food safety system in place, but it does not match exactly with the Part C FDA model, for example, the company has a typical HACCP plan and complies with food safety regulations, what is the observation?
Let me see. I'm not sure I understand what this question is asking.
So I think the question is, if you have a HACCP plan or a similar food safety plan, but it doesn't match exactly with FDA's model for Part C, what would the inspector, how would the inspector classify that?
I think they're going to want to look at making sure that the hazard is being controlled, okay? So it may not match exactly. Perhaps the investigator will document it on their inspection report. But I would think, again, they would look to see if the hazard is being controlled. And if they felt the hazard was being controlled and they put it on the report, I would think that would be considered a VAI inspection.
Are the international inspectors specific for international work / context aware? We operate in a very rural part of Africa, which would be very different from inspecting a soda manufacturer in Atlanta, Georgia.
I had been to Africa for several inspections. They are not going to look at, the fact that you're in Africa in a rural part of the country differently than they would if you were in the United States. Your process, your products need to comply with FDA regulations.
Is there an FDA or USDA inspection prior to a facility's opening?
No, there is not. And again, I'm not sure if the person is referencing a business in the United States or a foreign facility, but no, FDA does not conduct a pre-opening inspection.
And next question, if a company produces different product categories, for example, chocolate, gelato mix powder, does the inspection cover all of the categories, or could the inspector choose one of them?
That's a good question. And I should have covered that in my presentation. The notice of inspection will reference the products that they are interested in covering during the inspection. So very good question. In the notice of inspection would have more information about the type of products they're interested in inspecting during the inspection.
I am a contract packager who buys individually packaged food from manufacturers and packs them in boxes for emergency distribution to food banks, etc. nationwide. Is this something that would fall under an FDA inspection?
I think it would fall under like an FDA inspection. Yes, I believe it would.
Yeah, so typically if you manufacture, process, pack, or hold food for consumption in the United States, you have to register with the U.S. Food and Drug Administration. And if you have to register with FDA, you are subject to an FDA inspection. That, as part of the registration process, that's what you consent to do.
Yeah, and let me add like one thing onto that. And Jonathan, thank you. You gave a much better answer than I did. And again, FDA, when deciding whether they're going to whether to inspect that facility or not, will do a risk assessment. You know, they are focused on high-risk food firms.
If the FDA gives a company 15 days to comply with all of the requirements, what is the consequence if they do not comply?
Well, we went over that in the presentation. Again, FDA could, I don't want to say they absolutely will, but they could take additional regulatory action, which could be anything from that warning letter to import refusals or, reinspection. So, several options available to FDA.
And we will now take our last question. Is there an annual inspection program? Is it possible to know which countries the FDA will be visiting in a given year?
I have never been able to figure out, what countries FDA is going to inspect in advance. So I don't believe there is a quote annual inspection program. And to the best of my knowledge, you cannot get in advance the countries that FDA is planning to inspect. Now, I will say this as one final comment on that is FDA will notify the food safety authority of the particular country that they are planning to conduct inspections in that country. So if you have some sort of relationship, with, your food safety authority, perhaps that might be a way to get some sort of additional information regarding inspections in your country.
Okay, we are now out of time, but you can send us additional questions at any time by email to info@registrarcorp.com, which is on the screen up there. Likewise, you can visit registrarcorp.com/offices to get multilingual and regional support that is available. I would like to thank everyone for joining us today, and this concludes our presentation. Thank you.